Welcome to the latest with HABILITAS Foundation. This is episode 4. We're very excited today because we are broadening our coverage by including this time research. We are talking to Dr. Walter Wittich and Dr. Natalina Martiniello, two longstanding friends of the foundation and Lethbridge Leighton Mackay. So we're very excited to have them with us today to tell their stories and to express to our donors what the impact of their support has meant over all these years. So without further ado, I guess I'll start with Walter Wittich, Dr. Wittich, to introduce himself and get the conversation going.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you for having us. It's a pleasure to be invited and also to be in touch again. You know, many of us haven't seen each other in a long time. So good way to reconnect. I'm glad to be here. I am an associate professor at the University of Montreal at the School of Optometry. I've got quite a bit of history with Lethbridge Leighton Mackay, even back from the days when we were just MAB and then MAB Mackay, and now we're Lethbridge Leighton Mackay. God knows who we're going to absorb next. But we've been on a research adventure for quite some time, and that has also involved Natalie.
Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm Natalie Martiniello. So I too have had a very long history with the Lethbridge Leighton Mackay Center. Right now, I actually work with Walter at the University of Montreal as a researcher, and I also teach in our university program that trains vision rehabilitation professionals. I am a Braille specialist, so I actually worked at what is now Lethbridge Leighton Mackay for several years as a rehabilitation specialist. And I became a client of the center when I was very, very young. So I'm very happy to be here.
That's wonderful. We're pleased to have you here. That was the MAB site on Sherbrooke Street West, right? Was it not, Natalie?
Yes, it was. Exactly.
Okay. So perhaps we could start just simply by each of you, telling us a little about yourself and what you guys do together, and we'll take it organically today.
Perfect.
So my MAB story began in the days when this was before Law 10, and we were still part of the private system at the time. And the center at some point decided that there need to be ways out there where we can improve services, where we can streamline things. We had lots of discussions with the foundation at the time as well on how to best use the funds that come from the foundation to get basically your money's worth out of the support that is available. And so at some point, the discussion came to, can research play a role? Can research help us figure out the best ways of doing things, or faster ways, or cheaper ways? How can you do more with the resources that don't necessarily go up all the time? So how do we get the most out of what we have? And that was when I was invited at the very beginning. I was only there for about 10 hours a week, but I was starting to build a little bit of a culture of research. So people at the foundation, at the board, but also in the clinic, everybody could learn a little bit more about what we're actually trying to do in a research context. I did this at the beginning only in vision impairment, but then we expanded into the hearing impairment as well. I do a lot of research on deaf blindness. And eventually, my biggest task at the beginning was to get what was MAB Mackay to join into the CREER, Center for Interdisciplinary Rehabilitation Research in Montreal. And so that we accomplished after a couple of years of collaborating. That was very, very exciting. And to this day, I represent Lethbridge Leighton Mackay, specifically the Leighton and the Mackay sites in the CREER as your resident researcher and site representative. It's also during those years at the beginning when I started at the MAB site that I got to know Natalie better. We have known each other for many, many years, but at the time, Natalie was still working as a Braille specialist.
Exactly. My story with the center also began a very long time ago. And actually, my interest in working in the field of blindness and doing research and teaching and in providing support as a Braille specialist really stems from my personal experiences as someone who is blind. And so I became a client of the center when I was very young. And at that time, my parents actually had never met another blind person. I'm the youngest of 4 siblings. All of my siblings are sighted. But, I feel very fortunate they had the foresight to really advocate for me to have all the opportunities, access to the services I needed. And that's how we first connected with what was then MAB. And so I've benefited while I was growing up from many services that kind of got me to where I am, beginning with my earliest teachers and rehabilitation specialists who taught me all the skills I needed. Braille, reading and writing, assistive devices to access information, orientational mobility to navigate independently. And there's lots of really positive memories that I have from this, and people that I really attach to my story and how I got to where I am. There's personal resilience, but I think you also need access to support around you, and people who make decisions when you're young based on who you actually show that you're able to be and what you're able to accomplish, and not making decisions based on your disability. And I was lucky to have that, thanks to the center and the foundation. Also very critical in my early employment experiences as well. So all of this kind of led to where we are today, and meeting Walter and doing the work that we do now.
So when Natalie and I connected, sorry, Glenn, but just to continue this, when Natalie and I connected at the MAB side, we started realizing that we have some similar questions, specifically about how Braille is used in the rehabilitation process. And so Natalie, of course, came at this from the perspective of a Braille user, a blind person, also as a clinician who is teaching Braille, but it's very applied perspective. And I came at this from a theoretical and research angle, and I was curious to see how this is actually done. Until this point, I knew what Braille is, but I'd never used this myself. So I'm kind of naive when it comes to some of these specialty aspects. I can read lots about things, but this doesn't mean that you actually know what you're doing. And so Natalie and I started rubbing brains together. And it's at that period also that Natalie got interested in pursuing more, right? This is how you found yourself into your master's degree as well, Natalie.
Yes, exactly. For me, the topic of Braille is very personal. I think it comes through whenever I talk about it. I attach Braille to a lot of what I've been able to accomplish because I have glaucoma. When I was very young, I still had usable vision, and so I was using large print. But everyone knew, all the specialists at the center, my parents knew that I would eventually likely lose the rest of my vision. And had it not been for Braille, I would have really encountered a lot of barriers, because I ended up losing my vision very suddenly for a variety of reasons. It was really a situation where I had some usable vision one day, and then I woke up the next day and I had nothing, not even light perception. But I like to kind of tell the story that, because I had all the skills I needed, nothing actually changed. I kind of just left the house in the morning, and I had, at that time, I was a cane user. Now I use a guide dog. And I got, on the bus, on the metro, and I went to school, and I was able to read because I knew how to use Braille. And so that was very empowering for me. And when I started working as a Braille specialist at the center, I noticed that there were, lots of adults who were in the process of losing their vision, adults and older adults who were kind of later on in life. And there weren't a lot of resources to really guide them or to support them in learning Braille. And knowing how critical it was in my life, I wanted to at least ensure that we had the tools we needed so that if it would be of benefit to other people, they would have that opportunity. And that's what really motivated me to connect with Walter and to continue my studies and to really focus on, how can we build evidence-based strategies to support older clients so that they have the same opportunities that I had when I was younger.
That's amazing, because your story is so inspiring, Natalie, because one of our primary mission at the foundation is we dream of a world where physical disabilities are no longer disabling. And to see, not only did you emerge and thrive, notwithstanding your vision loss, that you also share, number one, you're also learning more about how to facilitate how to adapt. I'm not saying it properly, but you're pursuing further education as well as helping others is an amazing trajectory. It's an amazing story. So we're grateful that you're telling it.
Thank you.
And it's an interesting, in retrospect, Natalie and I have talked about this a lot, that there are a series of people that sort of shaped this pathway. One of the people that built a bridge between us is a former colleague of mine, Anne Jarry. Anne was Natalie's master's supervisor, but she's also somebody who is living with visual impairment. And so interesting for me at the time to discover how to work with a colleague who's blind, a student who is blind. How do we manage this? How do we overcome accessibility problems, for example, because the university is not a perfect environment either. It's potentially better than many other environments, but still not everything is as accessible and available as we would like it to be. And so it was a really interesting discovery period. Even the last 5 years, I think, that Natalie and I have worked together on her doctorate. Both of us have learned a lot about communication, about accessibility, about how to get mad at other people that are not doing what we want them to. It's a very bizarre world out there when you're trying to explain how something works, how to set your video settings properly on Zoom when you don't actually see the video in front of you. How do you interact with this software that talks to you and it's not intuitive, but it's very interesting when you see it working, and Natalie has definitely managed to make things work.
Yeah, and I think, one of the things that I think about a lot, when you think about the services and the initiatives that the center and the foundation supports, it's not even just about the services and the skills I learned along the way. I think it's also about how those tangible things then shape your own perception about how you view your impairment, your disability, and how others view it as well, family members, people in the public. Growing up, I had examples of this at the center of professionals who had visual impairments, who were blind. And when I was young, I didn't think twice about that. But what that did is it unconsciously showed me that, anything is possible, that this is normal. It normalizes it. When we include people with disabilities at all levels, it normalizes it as it should. And so I was kind of raised because of the support I had and the experiences I had. I was raised to view this as, just one aspect of who I am. And if anything, a strength, because it's allowed me to be very creative and to problem solve. And I'm sure I would not be as passionate as I am about these topics if they did not personally touch me in my own life as well. And so it's also was really empowering to me to begin as a graduate student and to again have access to someone who is part of the community as well, in addition to people like Walter, who are important allies as well, who understand accessibility and the role that sighted members of the community play as well in dismantling the barriers that exist.
Absolutely. It's clearly a collaboration on many levels. It's very exciting. It's great work. When you said accessibility earlier, when you talked about it, where do you see in terms of in society as a whole, but because you mentioned universities are pretty accessible, but is there a place that needs more work than others in terms of accessibility?
Oh dear, how much time do you have?
Yes. We could say a lot about
Yeah,
that.
yes, we
Or
can.
in other words,
Natalie
to
and
the
I
to the layperson,
yeah,
where's the hole in the boat, if you will?
yeah.
You know, because we work in rehabilitation, so we're sensitized, so we think there's a
Mhm.
lot of goodness going on, and then there's a lot of places that are adapted. But I was just curious, because you're researching and you're on the cutting edge, where would you
Mhm.
say there's the biggest need? Let's say.
Yeah. Well, before we get to the need, I can tell you what I think is the biggest step forward, because this is always sort of a balance between the things that are really working and the things that are not. From where I'm sitting, uh, the arrival of many of the mainstream technologies where accessibility is built in right away,
Yes.
that I think has become a huge equalizer. That, you know, for example, Natalie and I can both use an iPhone. Not that we're sponsored by Apple, but, you know, just for the fun of it. We both have an iPhone. We both use the same device, but the thing is that the settings for this same device are different, allowing both of us to do what we need to do. And that has suddenly normalized the interaction with a device that's a device like any other. So you're not stuck in any question of stigmatization. On the flip side, though, I think that a big barrier to the full integration of people with disabilities is stigma and the perception of people. You know, Natalie and I are doing some work right now in the context of employment. We've been actually supported in the past by the foundation to do some of this work to hire a summer student who is visually impaired. And we were just supported by the foundation this summer to hire another one of those students, somebody who suddenly will have the opportunity to add a line on their CV that is so easily fillable for somebody without a disability by working in a restaurant or in a grocery store or in some place for the summer. But if you're visually impaired, that's harder to come by. And so employers need to do a bit of work in order to open the door to people with disabilities, because there are still all sorts of misconceptions. You know, Natalie has a full employment CV, but it's not that easily came to her either.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And I would agree with what Walter said. I think mainstream accessibility, all of those products, that's really an important piece of the puzzle, and it will be going forward as part of what we need to see happen more and more. Because again, I think that when I think about a lot of the barriers I've faced, perception would be the biggest barrier, because I'm fine with who I am. I've always been fine with who I am. I have the skills that I need to succeed, but there's still a lot of negative perceptions about blindness or misconceptions about blindness from others, and that could be employers. It could be people you meet, on the street who, just make assumptions about what you're able to do and not do. And when I think about accessibility in this context, what we really need to do is continue to educate society to incorporate those pieces as much as possible. Like if I go to a restaurant and I have a menu in Braille, then it doesn't really matter that I'm blind, right? I'm not disabled in that moment. I'm able to access the information just like everyone else. And so I think it's shifting the conversation to also get people to think about what role we each play in actually maintaining the disability that people experience. And connect to that, I think a lot about White Cane Week, which I know the center holds every year. And that's part of it, right? Using those moments to actually hear people from the community share their experiences and to address a lot of those misconceptions and to bring the public into that conversation, because they play a very, very big role.
I agree. It's very true, very true. And that's part of the purpose of today's conversation, is to sort of educate and normalize and just keep talking more and more to sensitize everyone.
Exactly.
Walter, were you going to say something?
No, I was just communicating with my mother-in-law that I cannot engage in the kitchen right now.
Okay, that's perfect. Well, that's great. It feels very robust today as a conversation, and we're definitely the Habilitas family is, and all of our viewers are excited to learn more and more. So we appreciate your time today. Is there something that we should know about, or that you'd like people to know about, of what you're working on, or what's coming up for you guys?
Mhm. Well, in my world, I am just about to start a new knowledge translation project. What knowledge translation means is we're trying to find ways to bring research knowledge to the people. Silly as that sounds, but that is often something that gets lost. Researchers have a bit of a tendency to talk amongst themselves. And even when they communicate with the public, they don't necessarily do this in a way that people can actually understand what is happening. And so we're trying right now to build an accessible website that provides information about combined vision and hearing loss. This is a concern for many older people, but it turns out it's actually a concern about all age ranges, whether these are children that are born with impairments, whether these are young adults that acquire some of these things, or whether they are age-related. And we know lots about prevention, treatment, and rehabilitation, but the people that this is relevant to often don't know about it. And so we're building a website, and we're writing a grant right now to support this effort as well, to have this available in English, in French, in American Sign Language, and in Langue Québécoise as well. So it'll be a quadrilingual event, and hopefully by Christmas, this is all up and running.
Oh, that's fantastic. You have to keep us posted. And if there's anything we can do to promote and to spread the word, it would be our pleasure.
Thanks.
Natalie, anything in closing in terms of what's coming up for you?
Definitely. Yeah, I'm continuing a lot of my Braille research, and especially kind of thinking through how technology, a lot of the new technologies that we've been seeing in recent years, how that can support older adults who might want to learn Braille. So all of that work is continuing, and then both Walter and I are working on research on kind of how the pandemic has affected people with visual impairments, with deaf blindness, as well as a lot of the accessibility pieces we've been talking about today, the level of accessibility at the university, on the university campus. So we have a lot of different things going on, but what's really exciting to us right now is that we're able to bring in this summer student to engage in some of these projects, to support them so that they can hopefully have the same opportunities that I had to get them started as well. So it's all very exciting.
It is. It's almost like it's a full circle moment.
Yeah.
That's great. That's wonderful. Well, you've really helped us today demystify, to some degree, research, and because it's sort of a mysterious, to most people, it's quite mysterious. We like to call it, well, as a foundation, we find it extremely, the sexiest part, one of the sexiest parts of what we support, because it's cutting edge. It looks to the future. It looks to improve lives, and to certainly in our world of supporting physical rehabilitation. So it's about empowering people, and we couldn't be more grateful for the work that you both do and your whole research community. So thank you both for joining us today, and we look forward to more information from you on a regular basis, hopefully. And I wanted to know if anybody would like to have any questions. Do you guys, are you, I know Walter's on Twitter, and are you as well, Natalie?
Oh yes, definitely. Yeah. So I'm at pause to see. So it's PAWS, the number 2 SEE, and that's just a homage to my guide dogs. But yes, you can find me on Twitter there.
Okay, perfect. Walter is
And,
at Walter Wittich.
It's at Walter Wittich, but you can also always just Google my name. You'll find the website at the University of Montreal, where we've got a full summary of everything that we're doing right now.
Yeah.
Okay, that's wonderful. Well, thank you both. Thank you again, and have a great summer. And if you need anything, you know where to find us at habilitas.ca.